All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's 6 o'clock, and I just want to honor everybody's time here. Thank you, and welcome to another edition, virtual edition of Westside Meetup, hosted by CJ and Jasmine Kallio. My name is Brandon Robin, and I'm going to be the moderator for this evening's call. But really quick, well, we are recording, but if you didn't want to be recorded, you can go ahead and turn off your cameras right now. And while you're doing that, you can also turn off your mics just to kind of provide a smooth experience for everybody and to minimize distractions for the speaker. Lastly, if you had any questions, go ahead and submit it in the chat to your right. We'll be taking care of all the questions during the Q&A portion of the call, and that'll be at the end of our call. Okay, so like I said, my name is Brandon Rabe. I'm a buy and hold real estate investor investing out in the Midwest. I'm also a coach in the personal development and real estate investing space. Tonight is Westside Meetup, and just a brief history of that. 5 years ago, CJ and Jazz kind of saw a need for a meetup out on the West Side because they were going to meetups in town, and I guess the ones over there, you know, the speaking portion would take so long, and then the networking didn't start till 9 or 10 in the evening. And, you know, it's kind of challenging when you got a family. So, you know, they decided to start their own meetup. And from what I understand, it started with a handful of people, and over the years, it's grown to what we have now with a bunch of you here. So just a quick shout out to CJ and Jazz. Thank you very much for hosting this meetup. So tonight is going to be all about horror stories, and we have a few speakers. I did want to introduce our first speaker for tonight. Her name is Kina Knisely, and she's been a teacher for, well, she started off as a teacher for a couple years, and she was very successful in that. Then she decided to jump into real estate, and she's been a full-time agent for quite a while, using her skills, her outgoing personality and interpersonal skills, just becoming really successful and helping people find their homes and dealing with all different types of transactions. And next to her is her husband, Josh. He's been an engineer for he's an Army officer and he's been in the engineering space for the last 28 years. And he kind of brings the systems element to their real estate team, which is KJ Homes Now. Together, they help people acquire, assess, and market properties, and they've just been really successful doing that. I'm sure you've seen Kina all over the place, and we're just so excited to have her here on Westside Meetup. So without further ado, oh, you know what? Sorry, I want to mention one more thing about them. They've been completing rehabs, a number of rehabs, and I think they got 2 closing next week. So I just want to say congratulations to them as well. But without further ado, please welcome up Kina and Josh.
Hey, how are you? So, yes, Josh is going to tell our horror story because you don't want me to do it. I use names and can get not very nice. So Josh is much more, well, what's the word? Impartial. So,
unemotional.
All right.
Unemotional. I get a little emotional. So, but anyway.
So a couple things. I wrote down what we wanted to say because I wanted to make sure, you know, we got all the points across that we wanted to. And I'm old, so I need reading glasses. Our horror story is about one of our rehabs on Island. I guess number 6. Like you said, we're closing on 7 and 8 in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. So this was number 6.
Number 6.
So even though we sold this property on September 28th, it is still haunting us to this day. And because of that, we will probably not be as forthcoming as we would like to be educational, because we kind of got to be careful about what we say based on the current state of things. So, but we will try to impart as much horror and lessons learned as we can. So I think we look through this whole flip, and I think the next 4 things I'm about to say you've heard in every motivational speech or, you know, educate yourself. But I think what we learned from this was you have to educate yourself. You have to spend that time educating yourself, and hopefully we can impart why. Trust but verify. Number 2. Number 3, if something doesn't make sense, if your spidey sense is tingling, for those Marvel fans out there, act on it. Because almost 100% of the time, is tingling for a reason. And in all your partnerships, whether they be joint venture with your, have a common purpose or common goal. If you're discussing a partnership and kind of goes back to the spidey sense thing, if something as you're discussing that partnership doesn't, you have some doubts, follow through on those doubts. Work through or have the conversations to relieve those doubts, because they will come to fruition. So let's just describe this property, and we'll try to hit on a couple things that we learned. So we actually, closed on this property 14 December 2018. And we rehabbed it and sold it on 28 September 2020. So yes, that's almost 2 years. And when you have a hard money loan on this property, and it's actually on your drive to work every day, and every day you drive by it, and it's $200 for 2 years, that's a horror story. So it was almost 2 years in the making. And even though there were proceeds at the end, we closed and there were proceeds, we lost lots of money. And I won't, and to be honest, I'm almost afraid to calculate it, because I would probably, I know I would cry. I know generally what it is, and I'm already crying about that, but it was due to extended holding time, contractor issues, and permitting. So we want to talk about, those were the sort of the three factors of our horror story. So there was a hard money loan on the property, but all the remaining funds for the remaining purchase costs, closing costs, holding costs, any rehab cost differential from our rehab loan came from the holding entity. So our holding entity. We originally planned for a 6-month rehab, 6 months holding costs. The market was great when we started, in terms of the location, days on market, all that stuff. None of that happened, right? We obviously held it longer, and the market was not in our favor by the time we actually wanted to sell it. So issue one was permitting. So once again, we were uneducated in that. You need to educate yourself. If you're working with an architect or a permit runner, understand exactly what they need to do and what they say they're going to do, and verify it. So it was a lack of education on our part. We were given a lot of responses of why permits were delayed, and we just took them at face value. Once we educated ourselves, we just realized we were being lied to, right? So that was one lesson. The other thing we ran into is, because of the age of the house, we actually had to go through a historic permit process.
Yeah.
And that alone extended months for permits to be approved. So, we didn't know that. Now we know, as we look at properties that are this age, or the age of this property, we know to take that into account. And basically, the permitting issue basically took till we got everything approved September, October of 2019. So almost 9 months later, before we could really start working on the property. Should it have taken that long? No. We would educate ourselves and been more, probably could have accelerated that. Issue number two is the contractor, the general contractor. So what we've seen in a lot of when we have a new relationship with the contractors, initially they're full guns, their pricing's great, everything looks good. In this particular case, after that 9 months of permit delays, and so now it was time to start. We'd actually done some work. Well, so we actually done some work before permitting, and the GC was full guns, meeting all our timelines. We were paying him on time, all that. Then we had about a 6 months delay period where he wasn't really doing much work. And then once now we were past the permit issue, it was like, okay, let's go on, let's get back on track. Then we started getting the decreases in response time, less follow through on commitments, and an increased obsession about payments that we didn't sense, that we weren't getting from him before. Right now it was, before it was, he wasn't asking for material payments up front to do something. He had it, he would execute, we would pay him. And now it was, oh, I need money for this, oh, I need money for that. And we liked the guy, which was probably not a good thing in this business. We liked him, we respected him, we trusted him. And it took us a couple months to go, this isn't working out. This is, he's not following through on commitments. We're overpaying. So we fired him. Once you fire a contractor in the middle of a project, now there's more delays. So we brought a new contractor on, who initially was, want to start from ground zero. Let's do a whole new contract, do everything from scratch. Now we're talking X more amount of money. But we were able to say just no, we're almost 2 years, a year and a half into this thing at this point. Here's the gap that wasn't done by the previous guy, just do this. And he agreed, but of course there were things we didn't expect, and there were change orders, and so that price ended up getting more. In this case, all for the right reasons. They were proper change orders, but it was just more delays and more money. Bottom line, the horror stories, we way surpassed our budget for the rehab. I mean, way surpassed it. Issue number 3, holding costs. I mean, not much to say there other than we went from 6 months holding costs to almost 2 months holding costs. And that was more than just interest-only payments and utilities.
2 years holding costs, right?
2 years holding costs. What did I say?
Years. He said months.
Oh, yeah, I meant 2 years holding costs. So in addition to just, the monthly interest-only payments and utility costs, when we got to the 12-month point of the original loan, now we had to justify a loan extension. There were points associated with that. There was a DPO associated with that. So yet more money. And between and in our entity that was funding this thing, we didn't have that money. So we're going out and getting more personal loans. We're getting more, going to Cabbage, which I don't know if you guys have worked with them. You're talking 25-30% interest on those loans. We're doing all this stuff just to keep this thing. We just wanted to get rid of this project that just kept going on and on and on. So just more money on holding costs than expected. And then we talked about it earlier, but in partnerships, can't stress it enough. Common objectives, common goals. If you doubt it, if there's any doubt, which we had, and it came to fruition late in the game, don't have those doubts. Do not get into sign a partnership if you are not in lockstep mindset with whoever you're partnering with. And part of that is documenting roles and sweat equity. Because there's, if you don't document roles and who's providing what sweat equity for which portion, you're going to fight about it at the end. And that's going to happen. That's part of the horror story. And then our last issue is buyers, especially in this market. This property, I mean, when we put it on, we had so many showings, right? I mean,
we had a lot.
We had a lot. We had,
40.
I think, 4 or 5 offers over asking,
Yeah.
right? So everywhere where you want to be with that. But the property ended up going to escrow 3 times. And every time you put a property back on market, no one's going to want to pay the list price. They're going to think there's an issue, right? So our lesson learned there is in this market, especially where it's a seller's market, vet your buyers. You can ask questions of the agents. You can ask about their jobs. You can ask anything you want.
You can ask if their parents are co-signing.
And the number one thing, our number one takeaway about buyers, if a mother or father or relative is involved in any way, shape, or form of providing money for the transaction, run away. It's not going to go through. It's not going to.
The first time it was young. They were in their 20s, young 20s. They loved the house. Then Kaka'ako's showrooms opened, and they decided for the same price they could get a condo in Kaka'ako. St. Louis Drive's not meant for 20-something, so we go to bed at like 8 here. The second one, the parents didn't like the front yard, so they canceled because the parents didn't like the front yard because the parents were giving.
And the parents weren't even on island. They looked at videos and said, "Oh, that's not a good front yard."
Yeah, they didn't like the front yard.
It's not tropical enough. we're not making this up.
Yeah.
And, and each time you go into contract and they have their J1 period, right now you're 10 months, 2 weeks into, and they all of these guys canceled at the end of J1. So we're 10 days, 14 days in. Oh, got to start over. Put it back on market. And 3 times. And we ended up, giving a credit on the third one because we just, of $10,000, because we just had to get rid of this thing.
We just wanted it to go.
Just wanted it gone.
But they love it. So.
And they do love it. So I don't know if that's horrible enough, but that's our experience.
Pretty bad.
We learned a ton. Nothing, these things won't happen again.
The 2 closing next week are much, much better. They almost make up for how painful this last one was.
They actually followed all the rules. We didn't go.
Yeah.
We didn't go past our planned hold time. We stayed within budget.
They went way over asking.
They went way over asking, all that. So it'll make up for it. But this one was just, and it's still biting at our ankles today.
Yes. We can't really talk about it.
We can't talk about it.
Oh man. Wow. Awesome. Well, wow. Thank you for sharing. And it seems like you guys did learn from this past deal, because you guys are doing pretty good on these 2 upcoming flips, right? So right on. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I see some questions in the chat, but we'll just hold off for now until we get to the ending, if that's all right with you folks. Cool. And then let's go on to our second speaker. His name is Cedric Kaagbai. He's a California native. He's been born and raised in the suburbs of LA. And he and his family have been living here in Hawaii since 2000. By education, he's a emergency room registered nurse. And from what I understand, he really loves his job, but he realized that his body can't keep up, and he now needs to work smarter, not harder. So that's kind of how he got into real estate. I know he has his hand in a lot of different real estate things, like tax deeds and lien sales, BRRRRs. I think he has a timeshare as well. But I'll let Cedric kind of take it from here and explain what he's his horror story, I guess, if you will. But yeah, I'm just excited that he's here. So Cedric, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm excited to, yeah, I think it starts off with even my web tech or whatever handicap. I can't even show you my PowerPoint. So I'm going to talk you through it and all. But first off, thank you, CJ and Jasmine, for the opportunity to share my horror stories. It's been a secret bucket list item of mine to be able to share on a podcast or webinar, and it's pretty awesome to be able to do this earlier in my career. Too bad the title is about horror stories, but I am the subject expert on this. Bar none, when it comes to my failures, I know the most about my own failures. So I will share today.
Cedric, you're sounding a little muffled. Is there a way to, with the volume, or speak up or something?
I shall speak up. I'll speak louder. Hope that helps. Stop me if it doesn't. So I'm going to share a little bit background. My aha moments. I'm sure most of you have one, but my aha moment came in at a steakhouse at the Trump Hotel in Waikiki. I was having dinner with some high school friends, and they're all sharing the success stories because we haven't seen each other in 10, 15 years. And they're talking about the promotions, what they get paid, the vacations, where they've been. And, apparently I was the low man on the totem pole, and I thought I was, doing pretty good for myself for, what I was doing. But then one of them, the wife of one of my friends next to me, she said, I love real estate. I really, really love real estate. I have a passion for it. And that's what perked up for me because, I have my primary residence. I have a tax deed cabin in the mountains, and I had a property, an apartment in California. So I asked her, what demographic, what city, what metropolitan area, what class do you like? And she says, I just really love HGTV. I watch all the shows. I love the before and after pictures. I don't know if my poker face showed, but my jaw dropped. Like, you're a fan. You're literally just a fan. You're not an investor. And I drove home that night, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm sitting on my stuff, on my laurels. I'm not really doing anything. I'm just a fan too. I just happen to have one or two, titles under my belt. So I went home and I lit a fire under my butt, and I basically I did the podcast, the books. I went to shows, classes and stuff like that. And it wasn't an exaggeration. 3 hours a day I was on a podcast, listening or reading or whatnot. I was truly ignorance on fire. I was learning as much as I could. And all those podcasts that had 30-minute free consultations, I took them. I call them. And if I already used theirs, I would call their guests, because their guests would often offer a 30-minute free consultation. And it's kind of a good meter mark to see where I am in my career or my journey, to see where, how much I don't know. Because who was it, John Wayne that said, it's not what you know that, it's not what you think you know, it's what you don't know that just ain't so. And that's what I was kind of learning, that I was a danger to myself. I love quotes, and I kind of mishmash them together. And one of the quotes that I kind of live by is, ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. So take action, fail bigger, fail twice as much, and fall forward. So I basically did all of that in this one transaction. Brandon mentioned that I started off with tax deed sales because I didn't have a lot of money. So I studied that, and I ended up, I even hired a friend that was better at spreadsheets than I was, because I sucked at that kind of stuff. Because I turned, and no joke, 30, 40, maybe 4 inches worth of properties. I needed to get that narrowed down to what I could look at. And so she helped me with that, and I narrowed it down by price, by what I was willing to go for and whatnot. And come transaction day or come auction day, things were falling off the lists, because people were redeeming. Families were getting together to pull their money together because they don't want to lose their properties to the prices of taxes, right? And on top of that, as the auction was going on, people were outbidding me. So my list kept getting shorter and shorter. So, the FOMO, fear of missing out, and I did all this homework for months and weeks. I've been looking at scaling this list. Like, I need to leave this auction with something. So I was getting frustrated, getting scared, getting anxious. And then finally, my last property was sold. I missed it. So basically, all the studying, all the research did was for nothing. So what did I do? I panicked. Knowledge on ice. I knew that I shouldn't do it, but I did it. It's better than ignorance on fire. I was on fire. I was going to do it whether it was right or wrong. So I basically looked at my runner-up properties, and I looked up all the properties that might have been a good deal, and I found a little property. It was built in 1922, 488 square feet in the mountains, about 3,000 square feet lot for $29,000 opening bid. And I'm like, real quick, while the auction's still going, I'm going to check out comps. Comps in that area for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath type area was 90,000. I was like, 90,000 is pretty good, times 3. And then it went up to 150, 180. It's like, no, we don't know what condition it's in. But I was like, sounds like a winner. I'm not leaving this auction without a win. So I bid a couple of times, and I got bid up to 34, 35,000, and I got it. And then that's basically where the horror story began, basically. So I go to the property. This is in California, so I had to fly there to go there. And it took me a while to find it. I mean, the grade of the hill is 30 degrees. So when I'm on the road and I look to my right, the rooftop is just barely showing. So it took me a couple of passes before I finally found the driveway to it. But the wall, when I stood on one end of the cabin to look at it, it was wavy like a Ruffles potato chip. Like that's the whole wall. I mean, it was not straight at all. And it was broken into multiple times over the years by animals, not just people, by animals. It was kind of nuts. So I got inside, no joke, there was plastic down the middle of it. So it's a cabin, it's plastic down the middle of it. I broke through the plastic, look on the right side, thinking maybe it'd be a murder scene or something like that. 3 inches of soil. 3 inches of soil, potted plants everywhere, lights, like expensive lights. Why are there expensive lights in here? I'm pretty sure most of you guys already know they're growing weed in there. They're growing weed inside the cabin on the ground. It's kind of nuts. But that was, I asked some of the agents out there, and they're like, oh, you mean the drug house, the weed house? I'm like, oh, another agent said, oh, the house with the naked guy in it. It's like, what do you mean naked guy in it? Apparently somebody found the weed house, was trying to steal the weed, and was tied down, duct taped, and left for dead inside that house. And he broke free and was running down the street buck naked, and he made the news. So this house, this cabin was kind of popular. But that's history. That doesn't affect my price, right? It shouldn't. But further down the line, a couple of months later, I get a letter in the mail. Of course, because I was getting a lot of letters, a lot of flyers, because you pop positive on the radar of other investors, skip tracing, all that kind of stuff. But I get this certified letter. It looks a little more special, so I open it up, and it's from Mr. Montero saying, hey, I heard we bought a cabin together. I read further, he's got pictures of parcels, demographics. The border goes right through the cabin back door, so we're sharing this cabin. Like, how is this possible? If I bought this through a county deed sale, shouldn't this be washed? Shouldn't this be clean? Not so. I call 5, 6, 7, 8 different surveyors. I research this online. I do as much as I can, being a newer guy. Finally, the 5th or 6th interview of a surveyor, one guy comes up, calls me up and says, you know what, Cedric? I feel bad taking your money. I could take your money, $900. I know I'm going to kill you, but I could tell you right off the bat, your back door is over the line. You share this cabin with this guy. He has every right to burn down his end of the cabin if he wants to. So this guy that mailed you the letter, it's legit. This part of the mountain, for whatever reason, this part at that time, the lines were cut very haphazardly, and it's very common. So I had to enter negotiations with this guy. I call him back 6 months later. I mean, it wasn't very, very cordial. He tries to tell me I'm a nice guy. You should do business with me. Like, says everybody, right? I go, all right, how does it work? Because you can't move forward. I can't move forward unless someone buys each other out. So what do you want to do? I'm the new guy. I'm throwing all my cards on the table. Rookie mistake number one. I'm telling you, I just, at this point, I'm over my head. Let's talk about you buying from me. What would you offer me? It's like, well, what's the condition of the cabin? He already knew this. Rookie mistake number two. He only asked questions that he already knew the answer to. It's tear down. So after I tell him about the house, a potato chip, the roof, he says, well, I have to consider it raw land, not really a structure. So I have to offer you about $3,000 for the land. Like, he knows that I paid $30,000 for it. He's offering me $3,000. Well, I did my research. I saw that he paid $6,000 for his lot. So I said, okay, that's fine. Let's call it empty raw land. So is yours. Why don't I buy yours for $6,000? I see that you bought yours for $6,000. He says, oh, hold on. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more. So I guess I kind of caught him on his bluff. But it went another 3 months, 4 months later, we couldn't come to agreement. But after some coaching, some friends, everyone's got that Hanai auntie in the church, some rich lady. She took me aside and put me under her wing, and she said, you can't move forward without him. He can't move forward without you. So to move forward, it's just a number. You just have to find that number. So called him up again. We tried to be more cordial, and we came up with a number. Of course, he played the game, the song and dance, but we ended up at $10,000 or $9,500. So he made $3,500 off me, but I couldn't move forward without him. So great, I got that side. I look at the parcel map, and you know what? The right side, because of that steep grade of a hill, there's a driveway that goes down to it. The right side of the cabin also goes over the boundary. So I have to find this owner as well. So I look under last owned land, all that kind of jazz. There's 5, 6 names, all of them the same last name, 13-letter last name, very unique. So it shouldn't be that hard to find. I go to the tax records, go to the county multiple times, and I find all the addresses I could. I write letters, handwritten letters, so that they would stand out. Different colors, even all that kind of stuff. 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, I get a call from a little old lady, sweet sounding voice. And she's like, yeah, my brother got a letter. It's a trust. That's why there's so many names on it. Next generation, people started dying. So me and my husband took over it. So it's just us that you need to deal with. Golden. This is golden. She says, we've been paying taxes on it for 20, 25 years. So we just want to get rid of it. We had dreams, but now my husband's got dementia. He's in a wheelchair. I was like, this is golden. She's giving me information. I've got intel, so I can make an offer. So I paid $10,000 for the left. I said, I don't want to pay $10,000 for the right. I said, you know what? I'd love to take it off you. I bought it for XYZ. I put some cards on the table. I said, I'd love to buy it from you for $3,000, $4,000, so that you don't have to pay taxes anymore. The next due date was coming up. She said, let me talk to my husband about it and I'll get back to you. 2 weeks later, she gets back to me and she brings comps. I looked at these comps too. She happened to pick the most expensive comps in the neighborhood. She says, I need X amount per square foot. That pushed the price to $30,000. I'm like, I just can't do $30,000 for an empty lot. I just cannot. I'm so sorry. So instead of trying to nickel and dime, I gave her my best and final offer. I said, maybe another rookie mistake, but I told her, I could do 10. That's the best I could do. Otherwise, you're going to pay taxes until you die and you pass it to your kids, and then I'll be stuck. And I told her my song and dance about, this is for my kids, my future, blah, blah. But rather than you continue to pay taxes until you die, please consider my last offer. And she took it. She took it. So I moved forward. I bought the left side, I bought the right side, but I was negotiating for one lot. And guess what? She owned 2 lots. So I just quadrupled the size of my cabin space for about $20,000. Not great, but not bad, because I could only move forward with those extra lots. So I got those. So I think I'm good, right? Title's still not perfect. I try to move this property and they say there's a lien against it. I thought deeds are supposed to have no liens against it in an auction, but not this one. Because it's in the mountains, there's one well that supplies about 20 houses up there, because this is built in the 20s. Apparently, this one well services 20 properties, and the previous owner, or a couple previous owners before, she didn't pay. She had about $10,000 outstanding. And the well company, the co-op, Strawberry Lodge Mutual Water Company, will not give rights to this cabin, to this property, unless that was expunged or just extinguished. So I said, how do I get this lady to pay? I was like, well, we've been trying for 10, 15 years. Good luck. I said, all right. So I hire a private investigator. I do my stuff, all that kind of stuff. I said $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 later. I actually found her twice. She's, I would definitely say in my emergency room, psychiatric nursing experience, she's on the spectrum. She's got, she's at least antisocial, at least oppositional, defiant, at least paranoid. But she answered the phone twice by accident, and then she tried to say her name was something else. So I did find her. And then she took the information that I told her about the water thing to call the company, as I asked her to clear it up. And she tried to coerce the water company to give her money, and then she's tried to sell me. It was wrong. Whatever it was, she was making up stuff. Long story short, the only way to do this, I had to go get an attorney. We tried to seek out anybody with vested interest in the cabin. That's in multiple cities, multiple states, writing letters and posting it in the newspapers to get perfect title. That cost me another 16 grand. 16 grand for that legal journey. And then finally went to court in September of last year. And then 12 minutes max, maybe 15 questions, the attorney asked me, I'm going to ask you yes and no questions. You just answer the best of your ability. And did you post it in the newspaper? Did you see? Did you hire a private investigator? Did you blah, blah? And of course the answers were yes to most of those. So at the end of the 12, 15 questions, the court says, okay, the property's yours, the parcel's yours, the tax map key, all of them are co-joined, goes 4 into 1, it's all yours. So finally it's mine. You think the story's over, right? I finally get to sell it. I sell it owner financing to another investor. And now he sends me 3 checks for the first 3 months. The second one bounces. And basically the story continues. He's a couple of months late now. So that's where we're at now. But basically my strategy now, my exit strategy finally now is give him 3-4 months. I mean, the payment is really low. He bought it for asking price, 85 grand. I think I'm all in 83. Amortizer worth 30, 7%, due in full in 7 years, $25,000 down. So I get 25 in pocket to pay a lot of my fees. I'm getting 465 a month, supposed to be. So I'm gonna wait. My plan right now is basically wait 3 months, because $1,200 is a little harder for this guy to pay off than $400. Obviously, $400 is a lot. But once he gets behind 3 months, then I'll look at the foreclosure process. Because if I'm going to pay more money for legal fees, I want to win. I want 12 questions, 12 minutes in court, and out the door with the title again, basically. But that's where I'm at with my horror story. It's fun to talk about because I've learned so much along the way. It's basically tuition. It's since 2016 auction to 2020 now. But moving money makes money. Standing on the sidelines and being at a dinner table talking about watching TV doesn't make money. So basically, I learned to basically move forward, fall forward, and live those quotes. Basically, that's where I'm at. But thank you for your time. That's my story. I wish I had the slideshow for you because I made some funny pictures, but so such is life.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you, Cedric. I'm glad to hear that you're taking it as a tuition, right? You're moving forward and everything is an opportunity to learn and grow from. So awesome. I see that we still have some time. So we have one more speaker who doesn't really need an introduction because we should all know who he is by now. If not, his name is CJ Kallio of WNN Properties. He's also the co-host of this meetup with his wife, Jazz. And he's just a really great guy. I'm privileged to call him a friend. And I just looking forward to hear what he has to say, what kind of horror story he has for us. So, CJ?
Thanks, Brandon, for the introduction. Well, me and Jazz have been contemplating this whole day what we should share because we have a whole portfolio of horror stories. And off of what Cedric and Kina has been speaking on, I really don't want to rehash a similar story. So one story I haven't heard was a story where somebody committed suicide in their property. Jazz, do you remember this one? Yes, suicide. Well, long story short, I'm a BRRRR specialist. I focus on doing BRRRR properties. So what I look for is value add properties that I can buy cheap cash, put some sweat equity in it by renovating, and then rent it out, refinance, and repeat. That's the BRRRR. Well, on this particular BRRRR, I got a killer deal. It was a sweet deal for this property. Couldn't pass it up, purchased the BRRRR, began the rehab, got it rented, in like less than a week, our property manager gives us a call, and my GC gives us a call. and they're both frantic because there's cops at our house. It just got finished. It just got rented. It was nicely done. And we got the news that something horrible has happened. It's now officially a crime scene. And FYI, we're going to have to redo the rehab. Long story short, we found out that the tenant's brother was going through some sort of depression, was believed to be on drugs, wasn't even a person supposed to be living at the property, had too much of whatever that person was taking, and decided to basically pull the trigger. Let's just say that in an upward motion and completely recolor our room that we just painted white. Bullet hole through the ceiling, tape all around, brand new rehab. And it's a very sad story and unfortunate. And we realize that no matter what we do on the verification side, there's still a variable that is uncontrollable, right? The human nature, the human aspect of what we do, especially on the buy and hold side where we're dealing with renters. We have contracts. We've been doing this for years. We vetted the tenant. We have a great property manager, did a great job, but unfortunately, just a relative, a person not even supposed to be in our property or living in our property, ended up choosing to exit then and there. And yes, the photos were very unpleasant to see. And the price, it really was unpleasant to see. And the delay of getting it cleaned up properly, because there is human parts. I mean, Cedric would know, he's a registered nurse. It's not exactly the easiest thing to clean and to disinfect and to get back into a safe state. Our time to turn it around and get it re-rented took us a lot longer than what we would like. Plus, we had to just refinish what we just refinished. That's just one of several horror stories that I have. And I don't want to go into too much more detail of it because I think questions Q&A is important in this aspect. And if anybody else wants to learn any more about my horror stories, I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards. But Brandon, I just want to keep it short and sweet. You can take it here.
Okay, right on. Thanks, CJ. Appreciate. Boy, what a story. So I think this is the Q&A portion of our call. I did see a question pop up in our chat by Stacy, and this is for Kina and Josh. I think they're still on. They kind of disappeared from my screen. But Stacy asked, what age of home requires a historic permit? And I don't see them on. That's a great question.
I think they fell off.
Oh, okay. Does anybody here on the call have any insight on that wants to chime in?
My 2 cents, not that I have one of these, but I heard from other people is that one, it's an application process that has to be accepted, and if it is accepted, you have to keep with certain rules of what the state considers keeping it historical. Like, I don't know if it's the outside or inside of the piece that was considered whatever special to the city, and you have to maintain that.
Hey Cedric, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it sounds very muffled and we can't hear you at all. I'm not sure if anyone else is experiencing that.
I think so. So sorry. But I think that one, it has to be, I guess, in regulation of whatever the city asks you to do to keep it historical. And then one person told me that they had to make it available for public viewing 1 day out of the month. I don't know if anyone can tell me that's right or wrong, but it has to be available because it's a historical thing, and that's what they have to do for the city in return for the tax benefit of being historical. Yeah, sorry about my audio. I don't know what's going on.
No, no worries. Wow, thank you for sharing. Wow, that's interesting. I think Amart had a similar question. Cedric, would you know if it varies by area or is it island-wide? Does it vary by area or is it island-wide, a certain date? Would you know specifically? Yeah. Okay. Well, oh, that's a great question. And then W. Bernier, I heard that kind of cleanup is in the thousands. Is that true, CJ? Was it pretty costly?
It's not cheap by any means, and there's a lot of um, I guess heavy chemicals involved, which doesn't allow it to be a space you can re-enter immediately. It takes time to cure the air and disinfect and so forth. Yeah, it's not a quick cleanup, and it's definitely not a cheap cleanup.
Yeah. Wow. Gee, wow. I still can't believe that happened in a property. All right. Well, the chat's kind of quiet tonight, but if anybody wanted to take the floor, it's open right now just to kind of hop on and ask a question yourself. Is-
I will say that, at least in California, if I remember correctly, if you had a death in the house, it's needs to be disclosed for up to 3 years. After 3 years, then you don't have to mention it. But I don't know about Hawaii.
Hmm.
The good thing is I don't plan on selling.
So CJ, I got a question for you regarding that property. Did that incident affect your ability to rent it?
Yes, it did, because we're very open and honest about what's happened in the property, especially since it was, I think if I'm not mistaken, it made some level of the local news. So, I mean, you can't unsee that stuff, right? And you can research it. So we did disclose it. We actually got it rented above market, which strangely enough, it just took a lot longer, more for, I think, things to just settle down and to see that we actually took care of it properly, and we didn't just, put a sheet over it and put a piece of gum in the hole and, okay, let's throw it up for rent. No, we did the
Right.
whole process properly to ensure the safety of the next possible tenant. And the brother actually just kind of skipped town. What I was told was my GC was going back to finish a small job, which is when he found the person, which we soon found out to be the tenant's brother. But the tenant's brother just skipped town. We never seen him after that. He never came back. So we don't know if he had a situation with the brother, but the brother was even on the lease. He wasn't even supposed to be there, and he was found in the room. So.
Wow.
You want me to add on
Yeah.
to the rest of the story on that one too? So the
Sure.
brother, the brother of the suicide victim, his wife left him. He took the kid. That's why he let his brother stay with him, and then he killed himself in the other room. And he still was thinking maybe I should stay, and then eventually the next week, thank God, he just left.
Wow. Wow.
He was
Okay,
very
what a
bad
story.
week.
Is that
Yeah.
gory enough for everybody for Halloween? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's fitting. Wow. Oh man. Jeez. Okay, how do you transition from that?
And and the neighbor, the neighbor heard the gunshot, saw the police, thought it was a drive-through or some sort of gang-related thing, and immediately requested to see if she could get out of her lease too. So there was a lot of explaining to do.
Wow. Wow. Jeez.
And I think Kina and Josh are back on. I think they had a question for you guys about, what age of home requires a historic permit? If you guys
So
can share.
the house we had was built in 1930. So it had to go through historical permitting. But according to Hawaii, anything built 50 years or earlier can be considered historical. So 1930 was definitely, we had no idea that we needed a whole nother layer of review. Because they have to make sure, it's not on the historical registry and nothing significant happened there. And so we did have the neighbors. We didn't disclose this because we don't know, and I could find nothing in writing. The neighbors were our archaeologists at UH. They just happened to be teach archaeology, and they came to us one day and said there were Hawaiian remains buried at the back of the property.
Oh,
I was like, is this anywhere where I can look it up and verify this, or anybody else? And they're like, no, we just all know it because we teach at UH, we teach archaeology. So I did not have to disclose that because I couldn't prove it, nor could I disprove it. But with the luck we had, I wouldn't be surprised.
That was the archaeology neighbor. The other neighbor, we called him Mr. Chatty Cathy.
Oh yeah, we have a chat.
Anybody who showed up, he was at the fence line talking about he told a story of a car went off the road and ran into the house, 20 years ago. And, he would talk, and we were like, please stay inside during open houses and stuff and don't talk to people. And then we didn't bring up the vandalism story of
The kid who broke
some
the
kid
window.
broke a window and broke in. At one point, we get a call from the police, and this same Chatty Cathy neighbor saw this vandal and
wrestled him down.
wrestled him down in the middle of the lawn, our front lawn of our property, and the cops came, and we got called, and were we going to press charges? And it was, actually, the more we talk about it, the more stories we could tell about this property.
It's gone now, and I have no knowledge of
And
Hawaiian remains buried at the back of the property because I couldn't find it anywhere. So
and Keita brought up, you didn't tell about the first contractor, so
yeah, we kind of
glossed over the first contractor. But, with our trust and not verifying all that, at the end of the day, he was probably paid $50,000 for work he didn't do, and
never did.
And we had to make that up with the next contractor to pay him for the same work that was never done.
Yeah.
And we've thought about going after him after his license and asking for that and getting that money, but quite frankly, we have information. The guy's basically bankrupt. He's got nothing.
Yeah.
So we're just bad decisions on our part. We're out that, and without giving a number, when I said, we got proceeds, but our loss, if you calculate everything up, it's in the 6 digits on this one. So
Yes.
I wake up in screaming tremors sometimes, and
But we're making it
screaming
up.
in the middle of
We're
the night, going,
making
I
it
should have
up.
done this, I should have done that. Why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
that's a huge tuition you got there.
Yes.
Oh.
We learned a lot.
Actually, I had a follow-up question about the historical permit. So is that 50 years, is that at the time of application, like submitting? Or is it like any time, while you're owning it? Or
Well, it's why it's got to be while they're reviewing the permits. So we turn the permits in, and then our permit guy said, oh, it's historical. It's got to go through this review.
It's over 50 years.
Yeah, it had to go through the historical review because they can tell you can't change a thing. Like, no, you can't add a bathroom. No, you can't move a wall. If it had any historical significance to
Is
the
that
history.
if it earns one of those placards? That says
Yeah,
this is
then it gets one of those
historic,
placards
this is
that you
historic
see, like,
home,
in
and you can't do
Diamond.
anything. In this case, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
The permit basically said that's not the case. You can make changes because we made changes.
Yeah, they just have to make sure, but they can tell you. But then there are benefits to historical homes too, because your property taxes are almost nothing, like $300 a year versus $300 a month, right? So sometimes it's beneficial to have a historical home, just not when you're trying to rehab it and get a permit and get extra square footage. So
our overall lesson learned on permits, we won't say this beyond this.
don't get them.
Don't get them. Take the risk, pay the penalty. Take the risk, pay the fine. It's cheaper to pay the fine.
It is. I used to be always get them, and I'm a real estate agent. I was always get a permit. Now I'm like, are these last two? We didn't get a permit.
Don't waste any time on
We're
your rehab.
done.
Get the rehab done. If you get caught, pay the fine. Get it done.
Yeah. So we have two, and nobody said a word. So
This is out of 8 Well, out of eight rehabs, this is the only property we got a permit on, and it caused
No, Coolio. We got a permit on Coolio.
oh
That's what took so long
to
too.
create a workroom.
Yeah,
But that one did not have the same issue.
wasn't as old.
So 2 out of 8 we've gotten permits, and they were actually, in terms of the holding time and profit, our two worst flips.
Yeah. So these last 2 we didn't get a permit, and they'll be our 2 best. Just because we
they'll
just
be our
went
two,
in,
yeah.
did it, got done, and got out.
So for number 9, are you guys open to doing a historical home, or you guys are pretty much over it already?
You got to look at all the facts. You got to analyze the deal.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make any changes and you have an historic home, it's probably okay. If you're going to make changes, don't do it, because the time
They won't let you do it.
the holding time. Yeah, they won't let you do it, or the holding time will be way longer than you
Just budget
planned.
for your holding time.
So it goes back to having the right tools to do a deal analysis and factoring in everything. So when we did our deal analysis on this one, for example, we didn't factor in the historic permitting time. So lesson learned. We will factor that into our deal analysis next time.
Awesome. Yeah.
I got a question. So when you don't get a permit and say you change it from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom and you're trying to flip it, can you? I mean, technically, you can't sell it as a 4-bedroom. So
No.
does that
It doesn't
affect
count
your
in
resale
value.
as much?
Yes, it does, because it doesn't count in your appraisal value.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it affect your? Because I mean, I've seen some houses that it's not permitted, but still it goes way over asking, like it would
Yeah,
for a
I mean,
4-bedroom.
People walk in and they still see a 4-2. Now it may be
Right.
permitted a 3-2. Or I walk in and see a 3-2 when its tax record say it's 3. Says non-conforming. Bathroom count doesn't match tax record. Property is non-conforming. And it's just not, they're not going to appraise it as a 3-2.
Yeah.
They're going to appraise it as a 3-1.
So it goes back, she has much more experience in this, but it goes back to vetting your buyer. The appraisal is probably not going to come in at what the current configuration is, but does the
Right.
buyer have the funds to
Do
fill
they
that
have
gap?
the 20%?
Do they want it enough that they'll take a lower appraisal value and fill the difference, right? I'm saying that goes back to vetting the buyer.
That's why we want a larger down payment. You want them to have at least 20% of what you think it's not going to appraise, the gap. So if it's going to appraise 100,000 less than what their offer is, you want them to have at least 20K
Right.
that they can bring to the table.
Okay.
So,
Because our last one of the homes back to its original permitted configuration, because it wasn't in its original permitted
Yeah.
configuration.
we got the original drawings and brought it back to the original drawings.
And
And then that's what we showed the appraiser. So
the
we
appraisers-
appraised right on.
and, because it had like multiple kitchens, which you're not supposed to have, especially, but it did. It was approved in the previous configuration, so we had it. And the appraiser used that. And then our last one, we didn't do anything. We didn't do any changes, right? We just renovated.
We just made it pretty. So
But all these things, as you look at a deal, you have to factor all this stuff in, right? Are we going to do configuration changes? Are we going to increase the square footage? If we do that, what are the steps we have to take? What's the risks of doing that? What's the cost of doing that? Do we take a chance of not getting permits and hoping
getting caught.
and hoping a buyer has, getting caught, or hoping the buyer that a future buyer will like it enough to pay that? There's all these things you have to decide before you follow through.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Let's see. Serena Smith, I think this is for CJ. Did he get his deposit back?
No.
I don't.
And it barely made a dent on the rehab of the brand new rehab unit, let alone cover the cleanup costs. So no, he didn't get it back. I don't think he wanted to even try to come back. He was long gone. Couldn't be found, couldn't be reached.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Actually, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. I think we have a couple more minutes. So
Go ahead,
follow-up
Jan.
question on that, CJ. So if you like for that case, do you still go through like legal eviction process? Or how?
He broke lease. He broke lease, and I'm trying to remember the terminology my PM used. I don't want to missay it. So let's just say he broke lease, and we released him of it, and we just kept his deposit to offset because he wasn't going to come back for it. You know what I mean? There's no point in going the legal way because then evictions in our area cost $3 to $5 grand just to report, and it's all it's going to do. It's going to put a notch on his record for the next person who tries to lease up to him. In all honesty, if he puts down our unit as a rental address, they're going to call our property manager and it's just going to come the exact same thing. So instead of paying additional costs on top of what we had to do with the cleanup and the rehab, we just broke lease with them, let them go, and just kept the deposit.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that. So, hi guys. My name is Young. I know it says just Y there, and this is Jamie. She's my fiance. Sorry,
Hi,
we joined
everyone.
kind of late. So I'll be closing for the night. If we don't have any further questions, although if you guys do have questions, we're actually cutting out the recording at 7. But if you guys do have questions for any of the speakers or want to discuss, you guys can stay. But for now, yeah, thank you, Kina and Josh, and also Cedric for sharing your horror stories, and CJ, that CSI story. I've been watching some CSI TV shows recently, so that's exciting. But yeah, I just want to close.
Hey, we're on season 8 of the original. We're binge watching them.
We're on season 5 of Blacklist. But yeah. Yeah, so, thank you everyone for coming on this Wednesday night, and I just want to give you guys a heads up for our next month's meetup. It'll actually be by CJ Kallio of WNN Properties, and he'll be sharing about, what we should be doing now to prepare for the market shift. Yeah, so it'll be a very interesting topic. Yeah, and if you guys would like to get on the emailing list, we're actually going to change it. I'm going to type in, or I don't know, Brandon, if you would like to type in the new email address that we'll be adding to so that, it's just an email that we send out a week before and the day of as a reminder saying that, we'll be hosting our meetup at this time on Zoom or in person if that's a possibility in the future. But yeah, no solicitations. We'll just be, sharing our topic and the time, the date, and where we're doing. So yeah, glad to have you guys. So I think that's all we have. I'm not sure, CJ and Jazz, if our date will be changed next month since it'll be close to Thanksgiving.
We're potentially going to move it up a week to not have it fall on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We typically do that in November. So it'd be best to be on the email list so we can inform you on what time works best.
Or if you want to go to the website, the Westside Meetup Couple A on the Facebook page, we put that up in advance, several weeks in advance. So that would be their best bet.
All right, thank you guys. We'll be closing up the meetup now, and you guys can, stay on to ask questions or just hang out.